Welcome to the Weather Insights weekly weather briefing. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. Jeff, how are you, sir?
Good. Got to find something to do now that hurricane season's over.
Which ended yesterday. And I know most people are thankful for that, especially folks down in Florida that, really tend to every year have to deal with that stuff. But this year was exceptionally busy for them as well as the rest of the United States. And we'll get into kind of the wrap up hurricane talks and podcasts over the next several weeks. And we'll probably have some guests on and things like that. But this is the segment Beyond the Tropics. This is the weekly weather briefing that you can expect on Weather Insights. Each week, we'll go over the weather locally. Of course, we're in the Houston area, but we'll also briefly talk about what's going on around the United States. Like we have here, current temperatures, pretty evident to see where the colder temperatures are. We've got single digits there in northern Montana, the Dakotas, and Minnesota. We're into the 20s through the Midwest, and then 50s and 40s down in the Southeast and South. Rockies mostly in the 20s. And we've got all the jets and everything staying north. That's where the cold air is, and that's also brought some lake effect snow too. There's that trough that's digging in, producing that lake effect snow and all that snow around the Great Lakes, but the bulk of it there over in New York in the Buffalo area where they're getting feet of snow, and you can see that trough digging in, and then kind of some mid-level moisture there in the southwest moving into Texas, just below that dry air also that's moving in. And there's the snow we were talking about. You see those pink shaded areas, that's the heaviest amounts, and then lighter amounts are purple and blue, but all concentrated there in Michigan, northern Wisconsin, the Great Lakes right around there, and then from western New York all the way over into Maine, they are getting their share of snow. And then a band, kind of a thin band, but still a band of snow there through Missouri, lower Illinois, Indiana, through Kentucky, and there in West Virginia. So the snow is in full force in those areas, but the rest of the United States pretty tranquil as far as convection. All the snow just concentrated mainly in the Northeast there. And well, we'll see this pattern at least for the next several days. We looked at the surface maps earlier, and that snow is going to be sticking around, Jeff.
Yeah, well, you got the cold Arctic air. I mean, this is really the first cold air really we've seen this season, real cold air
Yeah.
coming across these relatively warm lake waters. You're talking temperatures in the 50s across these lakes. You're talking air mass in the 20s and 30s. And so that's just going to crank these lake effect belts here. And so usually your big snows are downstream here in the Tug Hill Plateau in New York, and then back down towards western New York and northeastern Pennsylvania, northeastern Ohio, this area right through here. So Erie, back over towards the Buffalo area, and then up here towards Watertown. And they talk about snow up here in feet coming off the lake. So you could think of the big bands of rain that sometimes come up off the Gulf of Mexico that we get. This is somewhat of a similar concept up there, except it falls in snow. And so they're going to be digging out, and those lake effect can go for days on end as long as the wind comes over the lakes like that are still unfrozen and relatively warm, produces that instability, and you get those snow bands that develop.
They can be pretty.
Interesting going on down here in yeah.
No, I was just gonna say then they can be pretty tight gradients too, like we see with the rain down in the south, where you can get a couple feet of snow and then just go a few miles away and almost have nothing. So yeah, it's interesting to see those patterns up there with snow as well.
Yeah, it can be very significant on the cutoff sometimes between feet of snow and virtually no snow at all up there. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thing that we don't have to deal with down here. But
Right.
anyways, so first time this year we've seen kind of a decent, really cold front through here. It's been kind of cool and cold, continental air mass coming down. And this is starting to force with the next surge of high pressure that's coming down through the Midwest, what we call a coastal trough here in the western Gulf of Mexico. And you're going to hear this a lot in the wintertime down here, is these coastal troughs and coastal lows that like to form here in the western and northwestern Gulf. And you can kind of see it here on the satellite. You can see this little line here is actually the coastal trough up here. off the east coast of Mexico. And what this is you have northerly winds down here along the coast of Mexico, and then you have easterly winds coming in here from the big high pressure up over the Midwest and Southeast United States. And so you get this little conversion line where the wind is meeting here, and it produces this trough. And this isn't a tropical system, obviously. It's not tropical season time, but there is some similar characteristics. So you have a kind of an area of elongated low pressure with showers and eventually thunderstorms. And what tends to happen is this area will lift northward over time as a disturbance approaches from the west. And you can see this disturbance out here in California, a little bit of a subtropical jet coming in, our coastal trough sitting down here and off the eastern Mexican coast. And so as this moves to the east, this kind of lifts the coastal trough up to the north. And this is a lot of times how we get our rainfall around here. We sometimes call this an overrunning pattern. So we have this
Mhm.
cool air, northeast winds entrenched at the surface. And then above the surface, 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, you'll get southwesterly or southerly winds, which will bring the moisture in. You can actually see that happening here in South Texas. So this is not at the surface, this is above the surface. These clouds are moving from the south to the north, and that's that warm air coming up over top, up gliding up over and top of the cold air at the surface. And so it produces clouds, eventually drizzle, light rain, and you can get into some kind of showery weather. And this is a lot of times what we see down here in the wintertime in South Texas and Southeast Texas. And so going forward, it looks like, today's kind of dry. Monday and Tuesday look relatively dry, but getting into Tuesday evening and then on through the rest of the week, it looks pretty wet down here in
Yep.
coastal Texas and Southeast Texas. So this is the European accumulated rainfall through Friday. So this is Friday evening, and you can see we're talking anywhere a decent soaking of rain, anywhere from a half
Mhm.
an inch to maybe an inch and a half of rain across Southeast Texas. This is kind of needed. We haven't had a lot of rain the last week or so. So we could use some rain. And then this is the GFS ensembles, not quite as aggressive as the European, and then the Canadian, kind of more in agreement with the GFS. But the point being is, it looks like a kind of a period of wet weather, unsettled weather coming to a lot of the southern portion of Texas, maybe over to Louisiana. As we get into that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday time period, we may get a little bit of a break on Friday, and then another storm system comes in for the weekend. So the weekend looks wet beyond this period. The weekend kind of looks wet here. Notice your lake effect up here, still
Yep.
going strong all week. So you're
Right.
talking anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of liquid precipitation. This is liquid. So you do that ratio of snow to liquid, 8 to 10 or 8 to 1, 10 to 1, and you could be talking, 15, 20, 30 inches of additional snow in these lake effect bands
Yep.
that are coming off the lakes. And so, otherwise than that, relatively dry across the nation. So, that was the model look at it. This is the actual forecast look at it. And you can see here rain kind of spreading up the Texas coast as we get into Tuesday evening, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with a good potential here across a lot of our area of 1 to 2 inches of rain as we get into late week, maybe some heavier stuff off the coast. A lot of times this time of year, it depends where exactly that coastal trough and if a coastal low forms. If it comes a little bit close to the coast, some of this heavy rain kind of spreads inland, stays further offshore. Most of the heavy rain stays offshore. The other thing that's going to come with this is eventually a warm front is going to move through the area, probably in that Wednesday time period. And so we're going to lose these kind of cooler temperatures and the low humidity, and we're going to get back into that swampy Gulf air mass that's out there that's just waiting to come back in here. And we're going to stay warm probably even into Friday, maybe the weekend. There might be a front that comes through Friday and kind of beats back some of that heat and humidity, or let's just say warmth and humidity. And then it may come back for the weekend as another system approaches. And so we're sort of getting out in the time frame 4 or 5 days out this time of year where the predictability gets kind of low. We got fast moving weather now across the United States. It's not like the summertime where it's kind of rubber stamp it every day, but we do have changes that come. And so, more than about 3 days out, the forecast confidence gets kind of low this time of year. And then lastly, I'll let Scott talk a little bit about this, is kind of what we're looking at beyond as we get into late this week, this weekend, and into next week. First thing, no real big Arctic air anywhere coming down from the north. So that's kind of the first thing. We kind of start looking for that this time of year we have any Arctic air building up in Northwest Canada.
Right.
But for right now, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, so these are the outlooks for temperature and precipitation. This is from December 6th through the 10th. So starting next weekend, and you see above average temperatures out west, near normal through the Midwest, and below in the Northeast. Texas just slightly above normal. And then precipitation outlook, to your point, Jeff, about seeing that storm system next weekend, that's probably why Texas is above average for precipitation next week. A lot of that coming next weekend, but still below average in California on the West Coast, above average precipitation north when you get into the Dakotas and northeast Montana, and then just the tip of Minnesota, and then near normal throughout the Midwest. So yeah, and you were talking about warm-ups. I think we could be flirting with a high of 80 degrees even on Thursdays with the warm-up this week here in the Houston area. So it'll be interesting to see how warm it gets and how much precipitation we get, because we didn't show the drought monitor. I took a look at it though Thursday when it comes out, and we're in dry conditions here in Southeast Texas, but you don't have to go too far to the west and southwest to get into D1, D2. And of course, hill country has been an extreme drought for a while now. So to your point, yes, we do need the rain, and it looks like we're going to get into a rainy pattern of at least, having a slight to moderate chance each day starting Monday as that coastal trough gets closer to us. And, models right now showing 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, but any isolated spot could get more than that. So be interesting to see how all of that plays out. Of course, you can keep it right here for the latest. Make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, the Weather Insights YouTube channel. Subscribe to our channel and turn on those notifications. And also check out our Weather Insights blog. Have a lot of good information that we keep updated, that we talk about here. We keep updated if you prefer to read. So we'll have an update later on this week and possibly a guest too. So stay tuned for that. Jeff, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, sir.